All right. So everyone, please welcome Wayne Shipman. He's an awesome dude. We're about to find out a little bit about him. So, Wayne, first off, can you just briefly tell us who you are, and so the audience can just kind of get to know you on a first-time basis?
Hey, yeah, of course. Well, right now I'm a semi truck driver, so I'm pretty much roaming across the country, and I mean, I literally go here and there and everywhere. There's very few places I don't go, and ever since COVID started, I've been out there driving. I haven't had really, except for my weekend time home or whatever. Me and my wife are both truck drivers, but she's with a different company. So we've seen this country and we've seen everything while COVID is happening. And, but I'm still a homeless advocate at heart. I still have this passion to reach out. I was homeless, a few times actually, a few years ago. And then I got into a really bad homeless situation that lasted about 3 years, where I was actually living outdoors and kicking it in Portland, Oregon. But, prior to COVID,
Yep.
especially in a place like Portland, Oregon, there was like resources plenty. I mean, there's a whole bunch of homeless people up there, and I was just having some really hard time. And to be honest with you, I decided to go kind of party for a little while and let go of adult responsibilities, and
Yeah.
I did the Greyhound traveling thing and kind of bounced around in the country for a while. It was after my divorce, my recent divorce in 1998. And there was some major transition happening back then, which maybe we can get into here in a little while. But right now I'm stable and remarried as of about 10 years. I think we've been married 10 years. And
Wow.
this lady I married is a real deal kind of fairy tale story that should never have happened. Her side of the family and my side told us we'd never make it, but we did. We made it, man.
That's
We
awesome.
made it.
And we are gonna, I did tell you yesterday, to everyone that didn't know, we actually met yesterday. We kind of had a really long conversation, really awesome conversation.
Yeah.
And I did tell you I have a question. It's burning me. I want to know that story, and it's gonna come soon. So everyone listening, you better watch out. This fairy tale story is gonna come to light in a little bit.
Hey.
But to start things off, obviously, your life started on a rough patch, and it kind of led to homelessness. And I know that every podcast that you go to, you kind of talk about the backside of homelessness, and I don't want to really kind of spotlight homelessness, but obviously it's a very important part of your life, and I kind of want you to talk a little bit about it. How did you end up being homeless, and then what was the process of you kind of getting out of it? Feel free to kind of start wherever you would like.
Well, for this particular conversation, I would like to just kind of touch on that a little bit, just so that your listeners know really where I came from.
Yeah.
And stuff, because I mean, I am doing other conversations about this homeless stuff, and some of those other channels are specifically about homelessness, so I don't want to wear out the topic and stuff. But you guys, I've heard a few of your episodes, and you guys come from the right angle about mental health. And you don't, we're not talking about a woe is me story here. I'm way beyond that. But my homelessness, man, really started with me. In the beginning, I was just kind of kicking it. Like I said, I was traveling. I didn't have any responsibilities. I thought in my world, I didn't have any responsibilities. Me and my recent wife had separated in 1998, and she was in the military at the time. And we were actually trying to patch our relationship back together at that time. And we had to get passports because she got orders for Germany. And I was gritting my teeth, really, because as a teenager, I spent 5 years in Germany with my military parents at the time. And it was my mother and her husband, which was my stepdad. Very awkward situation.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, in 1998, I was pretty fed up with how things were going because I was just trying so hard. Like, especially men, we have the pressure. You know, there's a lot of expectation for the man in the family. And, but she was a military lady, and I was trying to kind of fit in there and find my role because I wasn't really sure what to do if I go to Germany. But the problem was I was flagged. I couldn't get a passport because I owed something like $4,000 in rearage child support to my first child born with a different mother. So I got 3 children altogether, but they're all like 30 years old now. And we got like 6 grandchildren now coming in the families. But I couldn't go with them, which turned out to be the greatest thing because I don't think we really would have made it anyway. But I took off. I just started traveling, and I ended up in Portland, Oregon. And along the way, I sort of found out about my biological father. And I was telling you some of that yesterday when we were on the phone.
Yeah.
But in my travels, I thought I would just go visit with old friends and reunite with some family I hadn't seen in a while. And I found out about my father. Now, through the years, as a teenager, especially being in Germany, quite frankly, I was lied to for several years. My mother insisted that she didn't know where he was. And she said he didn't want to be a part of my life. He didn't really, care to take responsibility and all that. And the backstory is she was really gunning for us to go through an adoption, me and my stepdad. And I didn't want to do it. And he didn't really want to do it. It was very awkward. And this was stepfather number 4, by the way. So I witnessed 5 marriages. My mother was married 5 times. And that was by the time I was 12 years old, I saw 5 marriages. Since then, I've seen 5 divorces. They never worked out. But this was a lot of strategy on her part to manipulate the situation. And we ended up going through with it. And that was in 1987. And then in 1998, I found my real father. And that's when I found out I actually had a brother. And he was 24 years old at the time. And I didn't even know I had a brother. And so my father and I really tried to work through that, but it was so awkward and so shocking how it happened and everything. And I'm getting to where my real mental health problems began, to be honest with you. I had some really, pretty serious depression and kind of some anger and some teenage rebellion going on when I was a teenager. But I fell off the deep end when I found out about that. And it honestly took probably 20 years for me to really come to terms with it. But that mild depression and some of the anger management stuff that I had going on as a teenager turned into like violent anger and very serious clinical depression. And eventually I was diagnosed by a psychiatrist with bipolar depression mixed with bipolar anger. And there was a lot of, they called it histrionic disorder, which meant in my mind, as a young 25, 30-year-old young man, I was skeptical of everything and everyone because somehow everything and everyone reminded me of somehow that I was like taken advantage of in the past. And I was completely stuck deeply in the emotional hurts and wounds of the past, and I stayed there. That's what they call histrionic. But when I started going homeless, I lost track of my role, and I lost track of being able to really function with everybody else because I had to go to work every day. Whatever job I was working, I had to go to work and put on the poker face, for the sake of keeping a job and having an income. And it got to where I actually couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't just bear the burden of everything that I had found out. And it wasn't just the adoption, but it was, divorce and being separated from my children and finding out more details about the first child and everything that kind of hit me within a 2-year period from 1998 to 2000. I just kind of boiled over. And So I got stuck out there. I worked for a while at Portland, Oregon, but my mental health stuff started really from the inside. It was like a wrecking ball. It was more like a wrecking ball, to be honest with you, because, I thought I kind of knew what things were about. I thought I kind of knew, even though this guy, Larry, was the fourth stepfather in my experience.
Yeah.
He was my mom's husband, and I had a sister that lived, we experienced this together. We witnessed it and saw it all happen. But the manipulation tactics of that fake adoption really changed the perspective, because I started thinking back how many times I had to be lied to, to pull that off and everything. So for me, it turned into a very serious, very chronic kind of homeless situation, because every time I'd get a job, it would last a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. I would either quit or get fired. And so I took to the streets in Portland. And after a while, I realized I simply could not really, the positive attitude movement and being optimistic and just kind of be tough. I think, we were talking the other day, you guys have an episode on there where you were talking about kind of the stereotype of what men are supposed to be.
Supposed to be tough and not,
we're supposed to be tough. Yep.
Talk or, not even look like they're upset or look like they're going through something. And that's the tough part in our society. Everybody looks at guys like, oh, they're the men. They're supposed to be manly and strong and, never have emotions. But that's so far from the truth.
Well, it gets downplayed. And I was in the military. I don't think I talked to you about that the other day.
No, yeah.
But just to refer back, your listeners should really listen to your season 2, episode 12, because that right there drives it home about it's not only the stereotype of how men should be, it's way beyond that. It's our cultural conditioning. It's we're supposed to be competitive and stuff, and we tend to overemphasize the disorder labels, and we underemphasize the real emotional impact that we're experiencing as men. And I have to give credit to the women. They have the same problem. This isn't just a man thing.
Yeah.
But women also have this, even among each other, like on the job or in the corporate world or as mothers, they try to lift each other up with best intentions, but they put the pressure on each other to perform in a certain way. Put on your poker face. Don't let them see you cry. Don't let them see you sad. That's a weakness. And internalizing this as we go along, right? That's what happened to me. Was I was literally trying to live up to what everybody said I was supposed to be doing with myself, but it wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And so I'm really just trying not to get way off track here and stuff. But I like telling people that this type of mental health problem is more common than we realize. And I heard a statistic. It was either Wayne Dyer or someone like that mentioned it, but he said that the United States makes up only like 5% of the world population, but we consume something like 65 or 70% of the world's antidepressants.
Yeah.
Right here in the United States. And a part of that, I believe, is not as many of us are coming out kind of like what we're doing right now and actually putting it on the table and talking about things in real deal, in real time, and in the way it's really happening, in the way that it really impacts us, not only as men, like I said, but when we don't have a channel and we don't have a way to process it. That's what happened to me in the military. I went straight from that home that I was raised in into the United States Army. And I thought I was just going to be a patriotic soldier,
Yeah.
And what happened to me was a disaster because I was around real people, real men, real soldiers. And so to shortcut the straight talk,
Yeah.
putting on a uniform doesn't make you a soldier any more than a suit and tie and a briefcase doesn't make you a salesman. And you guys are one of the exceptions. You got an exceptional podcast channel, but I've heard some podcasters having a camera and a microphone doesn't make you a podcaster either.
Exactly. Yeah, honestly,
just to put it out there.
Doesn't.
Just to put it out there.
You know, and having a mic and a podcast doesn't make you a doctor that's specialized in mental health either. And you know, it's really, it's really just important.
Man, can I make a statement on that real quick?
Yes.
Oh, I kind of mentioned, there's 10,000 or more people talking about mental health. Mental health is the buzzword right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a very distinct difference between real mental health. No matter what it is, whatever labels we call it, it doesn't explain the experience that we have. You can call it PTSD, or you can call it bipolar, or you can call it whatever, but each person has their experiences and it impacts them personally in a different way. So there's a distinct difference between real psychological and emotional traumas or wounding, and just kind of passing through some mood swings. If your girlfriend breaks up with you, sure, you're having major depression, but as soon as you meet somebody that flirts with you, your depression's over with. It's like off, game on. But this bipolar that I'm talking about, I took the high road, and I'm not trying to pat myself right here, but I'm telling you, I made a choice. I was interviewed on my own initiative, by the way. I actually had a job in 2008 where I had health care, and I paid some money out of pocket to have actual psychological evaluations by a real psychiatrist. I went to the hospital. I got started with a family doctor. She put me through the blood work and everything, just making sure what my health really is. I told her, I want to know what the real numbers are. Let's do some blood work and find out what Wayne's about. She didn't really find anything wrong with my metabolism in my body and nothing wrong with my diet or health, which blew me away because I just came out of 3 years of chronic homelessness, living outdoors, bouncing around jobs like labor ready and temp gigs. And man, I'm telling you, it didn't matter what food I put in my mouth. If it was substance, I was putting it in my stomach. And she was telling me I was healthy. But anyway, that could not read my mental health condition. The psychiatrist that interviewed me, I told you a minute ago, I wanted to make this statement about mental health. The biggest mistake that most people make is, first of all, we don't know any better, but we trust the person that we go to for help. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but we trust them. We trust them to give us straight answers and diagnose us correctly. Too many times, what I have found out is when we go into that situation, whatever specialist you happen to encounter, they end up with a diagnosis about the person. They put a label on it, and then kind of that's where it ends. And that's what happened to me. They first diagnosed me with bipolar depression mixed with bipolar anger, and they thought they nailed it. They had this regimen of medications. I mean, everybody that I talked to had this preferred list of medications based on symptoms, right? That's what we do, right? We trust them, but their first go-to thing is the medication regimen. And to be honest with you, I turned it down. I was at that time, I was looking online, I was looking up some of these medications, like the top 5 medications for bipolar and the top 5 medications for depression. Well, the side effects were so kind of terrible. But the one side effect that the doctor told me about with these, I don't remember the names of the medications, but it was psychotic dreams and triggered episodes of unpredictable behaviors. And I'm like, well, I already have that. Like, why would you give me something? But anyway, I was big time into some pot back then.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I got turned on to pot early in high school. And ever since that day, my first day getting high on pot, it turned into a 30-year-long thing. And I could probably go back and count how many days in 30 years I went without it. Just like cigarettes, you know, I'm smoking cigarettes, and we'll go hungry. We won't put gas in the car, and, you know, I won't get a jacket for winter, but by God, I'm going to have my pot and cigarettes, you know. But I told the doctors, your medicines aren't going to be able to do what my pot can do.
Yeah.
And they, you know, so anyway, I made the choice to continue, and I got other opinions. And that's what I want your listeners to find out. I got other opinions, which took a couple of years and trying and bouncing around, but it gave me something to go home and really pinpoint and really research something specific, because a part of the biggest mental health problem that we have is not being able to actually figure out what our problem is. Like with my anger episodes, man, I would just blow up kind of like without warning. And I didn't understand the psychological, you know, however they explain it, but I didn't understand the path to anger as a trigger. And once we know the symptoms, we can sense the trigger when it's about to start happening. And that's when we can let our skills kind of manage us through that and navigate through that. Their medications didn't offer me any of that skill. It didn't offer me the opportunity to become familiar with what was really going on internally. And that's what I was craving. That's what I wanted. And so from 2008 until now, actually 2021, I've been on a journey in recovery, honestly. And it's not really, you know, I dropped the drug addiction. I dropped cigarettes. I dropped all that when I actually wanted a health conscious. I wanted to actually be healthy, man. And this lady that we're talking about, my wife, Bernadine, she's 99% reason why I finally I quit the cigarettes. I quit the pot. I never went back to drinking. And, I tinkered with it over the years. I've quit smoking cigarettes, you know, but a few days later, or as soon as something pissed me off, I'd go get a pack, you know, whatever. But I found someone that actually saw in me something. I mean, she saw something in me, and it was a hard road. It was a hard road for us as boyfriend, girlfriend. I wish I could get her on here and tell you, but she actually kicked me out of her house one time.
Really? I would love her. I would love her to come here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dating someone and you only see them on the weekends, you can put on your best behavior.
Yeah.
But when time goes by, your real self is exposed. And so on the weekends, I had to drive to her house like 45 minutes to go hang out for the weekend. Then I go back to work. Well, one weekend I showed up, and it'd been like 5 or 6 weekends we were hanging out, and I was my anxiety and my bipolar anger and stuff was reoccurring. It was reoccurring because there were some new events in my life that triggered everything. And so I couldn't hide it anymore. And it was just like it was in the past. It was just like it happened in Portland, where I just kept getting fired from my jobs, man. I'm telling you, probably from 2002 through 2005, I went through, probably, no kidding, 18 jobs plus. And that's what was starting to happen. I came back to visit her. I hung out for about an hour. I think I went to get a pack of cigarettes. I came back. She was gone from the house. The front door was open. There was a note on the bed and a $20 bill. And it said, "Your pessimism is so bad, I can't stand to be around you anymore. You need to leave." She goes, "So that you don't have an excuse, this $20 will get you back to your mom's house in Hope, Indiana." So I got kicked out and sent back to mom's house, and, first couple days, man, I was kicking it around like, I don't need that chick. I don't need nobody. But there was something about her. And I don't want to be too metaphysical, but my spirit and her spirit just connected. And I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let her go. And I just decided, I was looking at myself in the mirror that third day, and I said, "Wayne, I mean, I can't tell you really what I said. I'm going to have to keep it rated G, but my anger came out against myself. I was really mad at myself because I thought I did so much work to get beyond what I thought was bipolar depression and anger. I thought I capped it.
Yeah.
But the truth is, and we can get, the next point is, the truth is about mental health is when it's actually real, it's yours and it's real. The passing mood swings come and go, but real mental health scars are always there. They're real. You know something about that. I'm sure you can say something about that.
Unfortunately, yes. We really appreciate all what you have been through, and we really admire this lady's role and part in your life that led you to what you are now, especially when you know and admire your times with weakness and started to know when exactly you really need help. And we really admire how you say that it's all yours and there's something that you have to do about it.
You have to own it. You have to own it.
Sure. But how do you cope with your disorders now, Wade? This is so important for the listeners. Maybe that will help get out of the situation.
First of all, this would be like a 2-hour conversation if it wasn't uncensored and filtered through trying to be, politically correct.
Hey, it's unfiltered for now. For now, it's unfiltered. Go.
Okay. Well, I'm a straight shooter, and I have to tell you the truth. And I have to tell, I've dealt with a lot of homeless people, and I still do. I'm still out there. I'm still trying to do things. I'm trying to build a website. I'm trying to do podcasting. I'm trying different things to reach the homeless people where they are. Okay. And this is what I've learned. And this is what your listeners need to hear. I'm more like Clint Eastwood than somebody trying to be nice about it. But first of all, you have to own it. We talk about forgiveness. We talk about forgive them so that you can move on. But it's usually done from the Christian perspective, forgive them and be pure in heart and be, well, I've been down that road too, and it didn't actually work for me. And I mean, I didn't just try it for a weekend or a couple of times, guys. I spent probably 15 years of my life in and out of different Christian denominations. And I thought if I became kind of pure at heart and pure in spirit, these things would fall off of me and they would kind of go away, but they never did. The end result is I had to just admit what happened to me. And I mean, everything that happened to me. And your listeners have a list of things that's happened to them. Every person has to say, okay, you know what? All of this crap did happen. And it no longer matters whose fault it was. And it no longer matters why it happened. If they can get to that point, they can move to step 2. Step 2 is where you actually start feeling yourself in a very deep kind of self-respect way, because you're not feeling yourself through your emotional wounds anymore. I talked about my mother. That's pretty harsh. If a mother actually spends, I would say, 5 or 6 years deliberately manipulating her teenage son and his father, back in Louisville, Kentucky, for that same amount of time, trying to coerce them into an adoption, it finally happens. Years later, I confront her about it. She actually sent me a 15 paragraph letter on Facebook Messenger. And it was all about how he missed a few visitations when I was 2 years old, and he didn't send much child support. And, this and that and the other thing, it was all about him not sending enough child support. And because of that reason, she justified it years later. And her mistake was she didn't realize the consequences later on. I'm going to become a man searching for real, true answers, which we all do, right? We want to know really what happened back there. Guys, I was so tore up. I was so busted emotionally that I was living out in the woods in Portland, Oregon, in a tent sometimes. I was under a tarp sometimes. I was behind a building in the bushes sometimes. Sometimes I would get a job that I could get away with sleeping in the hallways of the apartment buildings or whatever. And that's because I was so brutally victimized. I wore this victim badge. I wore this thing. I wanted everyone to know my story and how victimized I was, right? when I say you have to own it and let it go, you have to get beyond that victim thing, because until you actually get beyond being the victim, you can't really taste the victory. And the victory has to be something so intimate and personal that you find the strength to fight through every episode of depression, every episode of bawling uncontrollably. My head would hurt. My eyes was hurt. My tears were like burning my eyes because they were just hot tears, you know. I don't have that anymore. And part of it is I've been through some very intense, very seriously dedicated mental training of my own. I've been through counseling. I've done that. I've been through the churches. I've done that. I've done the metaphysical Wayne Dyer thing about, trying to just have no grievance with anyone and just love the universe and trying, the manifestation thing and all of that stuff. But what you come down to is when you're trying to go to sleep at night, and the very first thing when you wake up in the morning, the very first thing that's on your mind in the morning is, why did she do that? Why did this happen? You go into the why questions loop, right?
Yeah.
Why did this happen? Why did it have to be me? Dear Jesus, I stayed for a while in the thing like, okay, well, if Jesus forgives and God forgives and he's all about reuniting and healing relationships, why are my children still not calling me? Which is kind of a difficult talk, but we can go there. It's the same problem with trying to understand as a man. We were talking about the social pressures of what a man's supposed to be. Well, a woman has the same issue. I've met a score of homeless women out there, and their adult children won't call them and talk to them either because they're ashamed that their mother is a homeless person. We expect that when we do our recovery, that our children will see our recovery, right?
Yeah.
And we expect and we hope and we've prayed for several years, and we finally get to the point where we can walk out into the sunshine feeling more complete, and we're ready to get back into the arena in the workplace and be competitive and be on time and be at work every day. And I'm a brick homeowner right now. I've got a 3-bedroom home with 3 acres of land, and I've come up. Me and my wife, we've bought a home. You don't just do that. And we've managed to do that during COVID too, by the way. But I've kept my job for several years, and I'm stable. And you know what? My children still struggle so much with our relationship that we actually don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
But I hope I didn't get too far off track, but this whole thing comes back to owning the pain and owning the wounds that happen to us. And when I say that I forgave my mother because she's a human and she made mistakes, it took me until only probably 2 years ago. I'm 53 years old now. It took me until recently to be able to say that without saying it through my teeth with a very strong edge of anger. Like, oh, I forgive her. I won't tell you like the profuse language that I would think of when I would think of this woman, but I have forgiven her as a human being because I think I'm obligated to at least offer that.
Yeah.
But I want you to know, it doesn't mean that I call her on Mother's Day, and I don't call her on her birthday, and she's not a friend on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
Dude, when I see her just make a post on her page and it shows up in my news feed, I'm just kind of scrolling through there, checking out things at random, and there it is. There's Kathy.
Yeah.
I go into the cringe. My muscles tense up, my lungs stop, and I just can't breathe for a second, and I'm just growling through my teeth. So I've come from that to saying to your audience, if you stay there and if you can't get out of that, your mental health wellness probably will have such a limit. It'll have such a cap on it that you actually won't come through it and actually say you're a whole person, like with holistic health. Holistic health means mind and body and your spirit, your happiness. Your happiness is based on your self-worth, not on them accepting you. Like my children, dude, each of my 3 children have their own kind of wedges in between me and them. And I just have to give them enough space because they're 30 years old. I've been battling with my recovery since 2007. And still to this day, I still have these bipolar moments where I get triggered into anger on a spontaneous moment, as recent as a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Yelling and growling and just flexing my fist. But the difference is, because I've spent so many years learning skills and studying, I've studied this. Your listeners have to study what goes on in their emotional traumas and how they express. You don't want to just categorize your symptoms into labels and say, well, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, this means this. Well, you have to understand yourself from the perspective of who you actually want to become. And then you need to find role models of people that have come through traumas and become someone like that can walk in their own space, and people are attracted to them because of the self-dignity that they show when they walk into the room. That's what I was attracted to. If I throw out someone's name, the first one that comes to mind is Lisa Nichols. If you're familiar with her, get on YouTube, look at Lisa Nichols. Listen to her story. She was a welfare mom. Her husband went to prison, and she was in like this really terrible neighborhood, the typical poverty neighborhood. And Lisa Nichols wrapped her baby in a towel from the bathroom because she didn't have diapers. And she had like $11 and something in her bank account. She is now like a 7 or 8 time New York Times bestseller, world famous author. She's got her own business. She's a multimillionaire, self-made entrepreneur.
Wow.
And she did it because she first found her center. She found who she wanted to be, and then she started surrounding herself with role models that conveyed and portrayed the messaging that helped her. She was kind of self-learned through all of this. She took the challenge, and she said, I didn't have much of an education, and I didn't have much parenting to fall back on. I had to do it myself and learn it myself.
Yeah.
So listen to her story, and you'll find someone. And there's no one out there. There's no person out there that has such severe traumas that's happened to them that they can't find success stories of someone with similar traumas. They're out there. So when you become hungry enough and determined enough to center your well-being on your respect for yourself, and you start finding role models that's been through similar traumas, there's rape victims out there that are now self-made entrepreneurs. Yeah. There's people that were in airplane crashes and they lost limbs and they've been burned, but now they're fully functioning. They're self-aware, and they're influencing people by the millions by their media that they're putting out on the internet. It's positive content.